Recording in progress.
Just in case you know it. I just want to say a quick hello. I'm Caroline Williamson, Director of the Royal Society of Sculptors. Welcome to our home, Dora House. Thank you for braving the storm of the year so far. Hopefully you'll be snug in here, the heaters are on. We're really, really excited about this exhibition and the partnership that we've run with Lisa and Jenna Artital and our society artists and Leslie and Thompson, which you're going to hear all about. I'm not going to spoil it. The evening's in two parts. So we have the first trio speaking about their collaboration, then there'll be a comfort break, a chance for you to see the show in the studio, featuring work by the second trio, who will then take over. So we should be wrapped up probably in about some time. So I'm going to step back out in case the doorbell goes. I don't want you to disturb. So, but I can still hear. Don't think I'm being rude. I'm
Welcome everyone, and like Caroline said, thank you for braving the storm to come here today. My name is Jennifer Gilbert. I'm one of the co-founders of Artital, and we have collaborated for the first time with the Royal Society of Sculptors. Artital, in brief, is an organisation that myself, Lisa, and another member called Sim in Australia set up in 2020 to provide more opportunities for artists working out of supported studios to work with their peers and other art professionals and curators and collections around the world. And for this partnership, we paired two artists, Leslie from Venture Arts in Manchester and Thomas from Action Space in London, with an open call out with the Royal Society of Sculptors, and then Elaine and Simone were selected to work with these artists. So we're here today to talk about the work within this particular room. I'm going to tell you a little bit about each artist first. I'm going to read that so I don't get it wrong. So the whole exhibition is called Making Together, and this particular exhibition in this room is called Fantastic Animals, Jungles and Mountains from Africa, Greece and Beyond. And you'll learn more about that and why it's got that title shortly. So with Leslie. With a practice dedicated to drawing and ceramic making from his imagination and memories of popular culture over the years, Leslie Thompson has helped steer this collaboration into looking at and discussing African animals, their habitats and landscapes more broadly. Leslie works out of the Venture Art Studios in Manchester and has completed several commissions and murals, including for Lad Bible, and has recently been commissioned by the Government Art Collection to create new artwork for the coronation of King Charles III. Which we'll talk about later. And then in contrast, Elaine's practice is rooted in the natural or urban environment, working delicately across drawing and sculptural objects in a myriad of materials and with precise detail. She has shared with Leslie cultural references related to her home country of Greece, and together they have created new worlds and learned new techniques. Elaine studied painting at the Athens School of Fine Art and has an MA in Fine Art from St Martin's. She was shortlisted for the first Plinth Public Art Award in 2023 and has just come back from a residency in Spoleto in Italy. So when you read the essay about this partnership, Jess Burney looked at these two artists online and was like, why the hell are these artists paired together? They're very different artists. This makes zero sense to me. Couldn't really understand what was going on. And then she wrote, this is the magic of collaboration. Together, these two artists have discovered a portal that has led them to a place of discovery, joy, and intrigue through a shared interest in the natural world, animals, landscapes, and colour. So we're going to unpack the collaboration and see what took place. So I'm going to start with Elaine. So you're relatively new to the Royal Society of Sculptors. So what initially drew you to wanting to take part in this collaboration, and what in particular drew you to wanting to take part with Leslie?
I would say that initially I wanted to apply simply because I wanted to work collaboratively with other artists and open up my practice to something new. But I was particularly interested in Leslie's work because I felt that he had a very different method of working compared to mine. So I felt that he was very spontaneous and direct, and on the opposite, I'm very methodic, and I always need to have a plan when I make an artwork. So I thought that we could learn from each other simply because we're so different. And I know that our practices seem very antithetical, but I also felt that we had similarities, especially because we're both interested in the natural world. Because Leslie loves to draw animals, among other things, and I'm inspired by landscapes. So I thought that this was a meeting point we could use it as a starting point to create work and also learn from one another.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So most of this collaboration have taken place over Zoom, which is what happens for a lot of the partnerships that Article does, because they're normally in opposite countries. But because they were in the same country for the first time, they actually met up twice in person, once in London and once in Manchester. But a lot of the conversations you had were over Zoom, weren't they? And us holding things up and sharing screen and that sort of thing. So Leslie, we'll see from this exhibition, and if people looked into you more thoroughly, that you love to draw. And that's very clear for everyone to see. What sort of things do you like to draw?
I like drawing animals in ways of my imagination. Yeah.
Animals from your imagination.
Yeah.
And they're often in their habitats, aren't they? So you often draw like a bear
Yeah.
and the place where it lives.
Yeah.
And what other sorts of things can we see in this exhibition that you've drawn? What sort of animals in particular?
Drawing the goat and the cat and the tortoise and
Well, there's something very special about those three. So those three that he's just mentioned, the goat, the cat and the tortoise, are actually Greek animals that Elaine shared with Leslie over Zoom, because you were from Greece.
Yeah.
So Elaine was sharing a bit about her cultural background with you, and they were three of the ones that you really liked. And so these three drawings on the wall at the top, you looked at pictures online, remembered them, went away, didn't look at the picture again, and drew them from memory, which is pretty bloody fantastic. The goat in particular, the Cree, pronounced
Yeah,
Cree,
that's correct.
the Cree goat on the left-hand side is incredible. And then Les, you always write something next to them, don't you? What sort of thing do you write?
right on the story of the goat and the tortoise and the cat.
So you've written a little story next to them. So I think next to the cat, it says the cat that's surrounded by other cats from Europe and beyond, isn't it? And you often like to sign your works with your name, but you don't just write Leslie Thompson. You write something next to that, don't you? What do you write?
Sometimes I write superstar artist draw. Yeah.
You quite often write that, yes. That is the signature, Leslie Thompson, superstar and yes, 100%. You'll see that on that particular animal drawing over there very clearly. So Elaine, in the space here is a very large working study showing your workings out for several of the works in the show, which to me is like a work of art in itself. For you, this is quite messy. For the rest of us, I think you'd say it's pretty damn neat. Can you tell us why you like to work in this format? Because I think you do this quite often to work out your pieces that you're making. So why do you work like this?
I think it's quite helpful for me to have all possible ideas and outcomes on one large piece of paper in order to look at them at the same time before I make any final decisions and proceed with the final artwork. And I do understand that it looks organized. I think my preparatory drawings are more chaotic because the way I visualize my research is very abstract and exploratory, and I don't care so much about the final outcome. I do have some rules when I make them about the colors I use or the size of the paper, but other than that, they're very experimental. And I think that I I probably feel most free during this initial stage of the creative process. Yeah.
And then you become more strict.
And then, yeah.
But you mentioned to me, Leslie, over Zoom, that you felt that you wanted to be more spontaneous, and that's one of the reasons that she wanted to work with you less. So do you think that that has now happened?
Yes, actually, yeah. And about the drawings, the preparatory drawings, I felt that there was, I found common ground between Leslie's spontaneity and directness and the method I used to articulate initial ideas in my drawings. So I was inspired by his unique drawing style, and I wanted to develop my drawing practice more. And I think that this collaboration allowed me to be more open to unfamiliar ideas and new methods of working. So I guess that yes, it has changed me as an artist and expanded my practice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Good to hear. So Leslie, if we look at your ceramics, which are all across the side over here, the two on the right are actually Elaine's ceramics. The four on the left are your ceramics. You quite often like making ceramics, don't you, in the studio? Can you tell us how you actually do it? How do you make them?
Right, when the bowl and put in the shape of an animal,
Mhm.
yeah.
But you don't start with the body, do you? What, when you were showing Elaine how to make ceramics, what do you make first?
Make first the tortoise and
But how did you know, when you were showing her how to make the puma,
Yeah.
you didn't start with the body. What
Mm.
part of the body did you start with?
I start with the head of the puma. or
The head. And then did you do you did all of the bits, the legs and the tail?
Yeah.
And then you added the body as the very last thing.
Yeah,
Whereas I think a lot of people might start with the body and add everything, whereas you make it in the opposite way, and you make everything and then make the body and then attach them on.
yeah,
So Elaine came up to Manchester and you said, I'd like to show you how to make a puma,
yeah.
which you've never made before, have you? Anyway. And the way that Leslie works is you think of an animal, you don't have a picture in front of him or anything, it's just your imagination making that in clay. So I think you'll find it pretty bloody fantastic. But we thought that was a bit harsh for Elaine to come and attempt to make a puma just off the top of her head. So you were making one, but we found a picture for Elaine to look at as inspiration. So Elaine's is the yellow one on the end, and you glazed that, didn't you? So why did you pick yellow for her?
Is fantastic.
It was a fantastic colour.
Yeah,
That's so you picked each of the ones that you've used, so they're never normally the colour of the animal, are they? So the goat is purple.
yeah,
There is a brown there, but you love brown there, so that makes sense. And then all of the other animals you do, you've done a red hyena.
yeah.
Everything is not the colour of the animal.
Yeah.
Why is that? Why are they different colours?
I think the one the different colors.
Is it often just the colour that pops into your head that you're thinking about that day?
Yeah.
Your favourite colour that day?
Yeah.
That makes
Yeah.
sense. But if you look at Leslie's ceramics, you very carefully, much like his drawings, you draw every bit of fur and every mark on the animal and their little feet and everything. So when he puts the glaze on, you rub the glaze on and then you rub it off again almost, don't you? So you're only left with the glaze going into a lot of the marks. So you're really still seeing the marks that you've made, so it doesn't get clogged up. And I think that's a really unique aspect. And is that something that you enjoyed the process? I mean, you did do the glazing, but how did you find the ceramics?
Yeah, I really enjoyed following Leslie's method of working. It was very unfamiliar to me, but at the same time, it was liberating. I've never worked like that before. And it was very interesting to see him make decisions as he was creating the ceramic piece. Because normally I make all decisions beforehand and then I just execute my plan. So I think it was refreshing. Yeah.
You make it up as you go along, don't you? And then, so you then made the ceramic piece behind you, Eleni.
Yeah.
So tell us about that then.
Yeah, this is much more closer to my method of working. It's a technique called slab building, and Leslie's tutor taught me that when I went to Manchester. And I would really like to, it was the first ceramic piece I've ever made, and I would really like to continue working with this medium, and especially this technique, because it allows you to make geometric forms, which are a big part of my practice. And yes, I think I will make even more complex ones once I practice even more. Yeah.
It's really lightweight as well. I couldn't quite believe how light it was. So over the fireplace and next to the fireplace, you'll see these books and then this round circular flag book. And Eleni, you often make folded books, and then you showed Leslie how to make these two that we see on here. What is it that you like about this kind of folded book format?
I do make them quite often. I really enjoy making all sorts of sculptural objects with paper. So I would say that paper is a very important material for me, because it's not, although it's not, it doesn't have durability, but it's associated with plasticity and versatility. So it allows me to make a lot of different geometric forms. And in a similar way, flag books and folded books can take a variety of shapes, and you can display them in many different ways, which I find interesting. And the content of my books, it's almost always landscapes. So I really enjoy contradicting these geometric structures with organic elements. Yeah.
And this is the first time you've done one with circles, is that right?
Yes,
Yes.
that's correct.
Which is very impressive in itself, this piece. You can display it in lots of different ways, you can display it flat, but your drawings on there were based on African landscapes and African trees that you've researched for chatting to you, Liz.
Yes, so the landscapes I drew were inspired by the habitats of Leslie's favorite animals. So yes, you can see a lot of African trees like the baobab, and also some mountain landscapes inspired by South African nature. And it's also the first time I use drawing for a book.
That's what I thought.
Usually I use linocut. Yeah.
Great. So Leslie, the two on the fireplace on each side, well, the one that is one that you made, and then Eleni was showing you how to make it, so that was her one. How did you find making that book? Was it difficult?
It's difficult to do anything in
It was difficult to draw the animals on. It was difficult to draw the animals on. Once we've made it, we'll go back into the making in a minute. On the train on the way home, we were trying to flatten down each double spread so that Leslie could draw on them. It was very difficult, wasn't it, to try and fold it so that it went flat rather than poking up at different angles for you to draw on. That was difficult. Was it difficult to actually make the book when Eleni was showing you, or did you think it was easy when you did it? You know, when we were cutting it out and sticking it, did you find that difficult?
Yeah, it's difficult.
It was difficult. I
Yeah.
thought it was difficult, yeah. But you made it look easy. So we took we took that drawing, didn't we, and took a copy of it, and then we cut it up and made it into one of these books. And Eleni showed us how to cut it into squares and hold it, and then put the cover on it. And then you've drawn on the back side of it all. And then the other one was completely empty, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So what sort of things have you drawn in the one on the right hand side?
I drawn the horse and the rhino and the hippo.
So it was whatever
Yeah.
popped into your head when we
Yeah.
were on the train, is what you
Yeah.
drew. Great. Fine. We talked about the black book already. Oh yeah, so the other thing that was nice about this partnership, Elaine was posting things to Leslie, and then you'd make them, you'd only open your package when we were on Zoom together, so a tube would arrive, and then you'd have to wait and open it until we were together on Zoom. And one of them was this long piece of paper, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So Elaine, what did you draw and send to Leslie originally?
For this particular one, it was a geometric landscape. And I was hoping that, I mean, when I made the drawings, I was hoping to create a meeting space between my very technical and organized drawing and Leslie's animals, which are very organic.
And so you saw this drawing, and then all of your animals almost like following each other, aren't they? What were you thinking with that? They're all in a line, aren't they?
Yeah.
And why did you do it like that?
Well, to go back to all the hills, yeah,
There's a really
Yeah.
great part towards the left of the drawing that's got a penguin sliding down on his stomach, which I thoroughly enjoyed. That's my favourite part, and I know that Sarah that was working with you, that's her favourite part as well. But then, and then you've also written next to each animal again what the animal is.
yeah.
But again, they're all from your memory, aren't they?
Memory.
And then this
Yeah.
drawing behind us as well is also, Elaine, you drew the meteorite in the middle with this red and blue, and then they're mixing together to make purple.
Yeah.
And why were you using those colours?
So my favorite colors are actually red and blue, which make up Leslie's favorite color, which is purple.
Yeah.
I thought it was quite interesting, another common thing between us. So that's why you can see that these colors are very prominent in the works we made. Yeah.
And then you've drawn, what have you drawn around the edge of this picture again, Liz?
Well, the moose, penguin, the Arctic fox, the bear, and the whale, and the wolverine, and the puma.
And what have you drawn in the top right hand corner, that big dark mass? What was that?
It's a meteorite.
So you've drawn your own meteorite next to Elena's meteorite, which I really enjoyed that. Yeah, and then the other thing that they worked on together are these prints. So there's 3 on the wall here. And then Elena's got a black one over there, and then next to the black one is a puzzle. And when we travelled down to London, you saw a puzzle in Elena's studio.
Yeah.
What did you think about that puzzle?
It's a different,
It was great. You liked to play with it, didn't you, and match up the
Yeah.
pieces, move them around.
yeah,
So then we thought you might like to do
Yeah.
that together. So the prints that they've done, each side of the puzzle has got one side of the drawing on each one. So in the space, people can create their own patterns, they can stand them up, they can see if they can put it together, because sometimes it's quite difficult, isn't it? As we found at the opening. I got quite frustrated with it, not being able to match them up. You like to perfectly match them up.
yes,
So that was really interesting. So we did these liners together in the studio, didn't we? So Elaine posted up the landscape part of 2 of them, which you can see this really smooth kind of landscape on the left and the right one. And then Leslie, you drew and then cut into the lino, didn't you? How was that for you? Did you enjoy doing that?
in China,
You enjoyed it?
Yeah.
Was it quite tiring? It was quite hard, wasn't it? We had this special tool that Elaine had, and we put a, you do a little arrow on it, so we come here, kept turning over, didn't it? And then sometimes you go a bit too deep, you took too much up, but actually, they've got really beautiful effects, they've got this kind of jaggedy edge to them, which fitted really nicely with the landscape, didn't they?
yeah,
And then we printed them,
Mm.
and you chose that blue.
yeah.
And then what was it like? Do you remember what we were using to print them with? Do you remember what tool we found? We didn't use a roller. It got quite hot in our hands. Do you remember what it was?
It's supposed to square in
a spoon. Remember the spoon got really hot?
a,
So when we went down to Elaine's studio, we were using a wooden spoon.
Yes, you have to use
In
it.
the Venture Art studio, we did not have a wooden spoon, so we had a metal spoon, didn't we, Les? And at first we were doing it, we were like, this is fine, well, you were doing it, and you, this is fine. And it got to a bit, and I was just going over the corner, and I was like, Les, this spoon is really hard. So actually, we just put a tissue over it and carried on with the metal spoon, because we didn't have anything else in the studio. But we learned our lesson, we should not use a metal spoon. Wasn't very sensible, was it?
Mhm.
And it was very tiring,
Yeah.
wasn't it? Because you just have this little spoon to go across the whole of the back of the piece of paper, which is why you can sometimes see lines going across them, where we've gone, well, where you'd gone, backwards and forwards across them, and I was going, yeah, I've done that corner bit, and what about that bit? And you were like, got a bit tired. But I hope you agree, they look pretty beautiful, and they were really fun to do. And then the puzzles are really fun as
Yeah.
well. So Leslie, what is your favourite work in this room?
it was the,
Which bear? The brown bear,
under
of course. Leslie adores brown bears. You draw them all the time.
the,
You make them in ceramic a lot, because there's a big brown bear, and then there's also the little brown bear further along. But the big brown bear, that makes a lot of sense. Why is that your favourite? What do you like about the brown bear?
some oranges and into, but
In the
of,
forest?
the,
You like to live in the forest?
the,
And what was the first bit that you said?
the zoo,
The zoo. So
Yeah.
you've seen them in the zoo, and in pictures, not in real life. Because you went to London Zoo today, didn't you? You didn't see any brown bears. That's very disappointing. But what did you see at the zoo today?
I saw the girls and,
Gorillas.
uh,
And what else?
giraffes, tigers, and the parrots, and,
So today Leslie went with Amanda, who's the director of Venture Arts, on a trip to London Zoo. You've never been to London Zoo, have you? You have been, a first time, yeah. So you went on a trip to the safari park with James, didn't you, as
Yeah,
well, to
yeah,
look at
yeah.
animals?
yeah,
So you like going to look at them, and then you do some sketches when you're there, don't you? So you did some sketches today, which
Yeah.
people are welcome to look at if you want to look at any sketches, maybe. Great. And Elaine, what's your favourite work in the show,
It's this drawing of the meteorite.
and why?
I think that Leslie responded quite playfully when he added his own meteorite on top
Yes.
of mine, with his own very unique style. And I really like this piece because you can see two very distinct artistic styles merged together successfully, in my opinion. Yeah.
And through working with Leslie, what have you personally learned about yourself and your art practice, and has it taught you to look at and approach things differently?
Yes, definitely. I think that it helped me expand my practice towards different directions. I believe that after this collaboration, I will be less afraid to get out of my comfort zone and try new things or even make mistakes and embrace that as part of the creative process. And actually,
I know
after
that's a big thing.
it's very you mentioned about my residency in Spoleto, which I did right after the collaboration with Leslie. And I went there and made a site-specific work as a response to the landscape, and I could see myself already being much more fluid in my creative process. So I think I will experiment much more from now on.
Look what you've helped with, Les. That's good, wasn't it? And so what are you working on next?
Uh, I have a couple of exhibitions. One of them is with the work I made in Italy. I will also work towards a solo show for 1 year and a half. Yeah, and I think I will take a lot from the collaboration and incorporate them into my new body of work. For example, the use of color. I want to use much more color, and I also want to develop my drawing practice more. Yeah, so yeah.
And Les, I mentioned at the beginning that you're doing, the government art collection commissioned you to do some drawings for the coronation. So what have you been drawing for that?
I'm doing the information of all the people up on the screen
Or people that were there at the coronation, yeah,
during the summer.
yeah.
Yeah,
And have you drawn the king?
yeah, do the king finished out there.
Yeah. And did you draw Camilla?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so you're still doing this at the moment, aren't you?
Yeah.
And Amanda, where's this gonna end up? We know?
So, yes, I mean, it's a major commission, one of 8 artists in the UK.
And some big name artists
It's name artist.
are the other people, yeah.
Yeah,
Go
and
on.
so in November, the government art collection will look at all the work and decide which pieces they'd like to acquire for their permanent collection. But Leslie's work is just incredible. He's done a whole series of TV screens that have the coronation, different scenes from the coronation on. And then from your imagination, you imagined who might be watching the coronation.
Of course.
And some of the people watching, what are the groups of people that you've chosen?
I've chosen King Prince Charles, Camilla, and Prince William, and Prince Adam, basically, yeah,
But the people that
Yeah.
around the TV,
yeah.
you've got Sesame Street.
Sesame
I imagine
Street,
it is the Mr. T in there.
You've got Westerns, you've got
Yeah.
the animals from London Zoo.
All the animals are watching the coronation. Perfect.
It's a wonderful
Yeah.
series of works, so I think they might find them.
Mm.
That's
I would.
brilliant. Yeah. Brilliant. Yes. Does anyone have any questions they'd like to ask?
Well, I've got not a question, Leslie, but thank you. Thank you, Leslie, for your drawings. They have made me think of all the animals that I grew up with not in real, but in storybooks. So I can see all those animals that I really love, that I haven't seen for a long time. So thank you for that. Thanks a lot.
Oh, thank you.
And Eleni, I have a question. I'm fascinated particularly by this piece here. And I wonder, when you're drawing so precisely, if you can imagine the effect that when a flat drawing, the tones and the shadows and the colours that emerge, can you see all that, or were you surprised by that when you finally put it all together?
I think it's part of my plan, because I always like to contradict the strict precision of geometry with the organic elements of the landscape. But at the same time, I am surprised with the final outcome, because as you mentioned, yes, you discover new forms and new colors, and it's quite unpredictable. Yeah.
Thank you.
I think because it's already almost 10 past, maybe we will take a quick 5-minute break, so you can see the artwork that we'll be speaking to Simone and Thompson to next. They are in the studio gallery. You need to use the loo or grab a glass of water, but then we'll start quickly in 5 minutes, if that's all right.
Right, whenever you drinking, we're gonna go and sit, you're able to sit on the back, but you want to sit on the front, but those want to sit.
Yeah, you back.
At the back, yeah.
Yeah, just.
Really great, back to the artist.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for the other.
Wait, so that's last minute.
Yeah, yeah. Probably get out with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a common thread.
Yeah. You just want to switch, we back. Feeling a bit nervous.
Not all is full comments left as you want.
Yeah, well. Well, that was rubbish, but anyway.
Okay, so we'll get started. As Jennifer mentioned, my name is Lisa Kaminsky. I'm one of the co-founders of Art Hall. And I had the absolute pleasure of working with Simone Kennedy, member of the World Society of Sculptors, and Thompson Hall, who is an artist at Action Space in London. I will also just read briefly their exhibition introduction and introduction to the artist. So, inspired by inequalities in society, Thompson Hall's practice often implements brightly designed symbols and graphic icons to express his observations of the world around him. His concerns around social change and marginalization created immediate synergy with collaborating artist Simone Kennedy, whose multimedia practice centers around the human condition, reimagining the realms of being human. They connected deeply over the meanings of absence and presence in personal and political ways. Absence Present, the title of their collaboration, explores personal identity, in particular the experience of growing up without a father figure, and broadens to consider the relationship between identity and the home. Each artist explored father figures with a shared departure point of men's suits, and the sanctuary, a large tent-like sculpture made collaboratively, brings to the forefront societal issues of homelessness. Thompson Hall is an artist working out of Action Space in London. In 2022, he was the first artist in residence at Autograph, resulting in a public billboard display of paintings on Autograph's exterior on Rivington Place. Simone Kennedy, member of the Royal Society of Sculptors, received her PhD in visual arts from the University of South Australia, and recent achievements include being a finalist for the Mosman Art Prize and a visiting artist in residence at the Tavistock Institute of Human Relations. In 2023, she was selected for the Royal Society of Sculptors Summer Show, The Shape of Life. And unlike most of the Art Hall collaborations and Leslie and Elaine's, because both of these artists are London-based, it has been incredible. This has happened, I would say, 95% in person. We did a couple of Zooms just to check in over August.
Yeah.
But she was excited to get going, so.
How are you?
Yeah, well, I was upset, man. But she was more excited than me. Got a bit of going on.
As you can see, I really keep these two artists on track. With my job, but what was great is, and as we'll talk about in a minute, their collaboration was really idea-based. And before even making work, they spent a lot of time together, visiting exhibitions, visiting each other's studios. You guys went to see Chris O'Feely, I think.
And Frank Outback, although we didn't see the show, we saw a few videos.
And we came into the studio, we came here to see the space.
Oh, yeah.
So they really were able to connect and have conversations ahead of making the work. And as mentioned, you guys both really bonded over themes that related to society and your personal experiences. And then the theme of like absent and present. So I thought we could start with this idea of the suits.
Okay.
Do you guys want to talk a little bit, maybe Thompson, you start about how this idea of the suit came about?
I suppose the suits came about through me looking at my own personal history, like my family, like growing up without a dad, and having that father figure not in my life. And what it's like to grow up as from a single parent family, which is obviously my mum who's a strong character, which I don't get that from, but but yeah, sort of like it's that kind of thing I looked at with the suits, and the shadowy figures is more or less on that same theme. Having someone missing in your life. How does it feel to grow up with something missing in your life?
The two works Thompson is speaking about is the two suits made of African fabrics, and then the series of figures on the scrolls behind. So while we're on that point, do you want to talk a little bit about those suits specifically and how the African fabric relates to your work and your family?
The African fabric is sort of like relates to my family's history of my granddad coming from Ghana, you know what I mean? So it was sort of like picked as sort of like all of the suits he used to wear in the 1950s that was just plain and bland, and to the grades I used to grow up seeing him wear, and it's sort of like reminding me back of the suits.
Yeah, and the suits kind of brought in a sense of working in 3D because you were already painting on fabric, so we thought that it would be nice to bring that out into a three-dimensional form, and actually it in some ways became a kind of embodiment, which I think the suits fulfill that really well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it addressed all sorts of things like masculinity,
Masculinity and all kinds of things, because that's like all basing some of the drawings that I've done, talking about these sort of like complex issues we know today. So yeah, it's sort of like interested me quite a lot. So
And with Simone, with your suits, which are on that longer wall, they actually take the shape of fly wings.
Yes,
Could you talk a little bit about that metaphor for you of the fly becoming the suits?
Yeah. So the fly is really a metaphor for complex psychology, bringing in, I guess, a replacement, a sense of something that is unexplainable. And the fly also fascinates me, I think, because of its autonomous, nature and its sense of detachment, sort of something about it being present because it's ubiquitous with us all the time, but at the same time it's completely detached. So that sort of mirrored my own relationship with my mother, and particularly with my mother, and obviously not having a father, there's that carries through as well. So yeah.
And then leading into that, you have brain sculptures.
Yeah.
Either can start.
okay, it's all talking about the idea of trauma and the pain that you can suffer from not having something like that in your life, and how does it affect your life in the long term. So you sort of like start to make those brain sculptures to sort of like talk about that in a bit more depth. So
Yeah.
And you introduced the brain sculptures.
Yeah. So I'm also very interested in the brain, the sense of our plasticity within this whole neurobiological world of discovering what the brain can do, and how it can change and how it can stimulate and how we respond with it. I guess my interest lies with how people use their brains, and so I kind of felt that Thompson and I could use that metaphor because we use art particularly as a resource for our trauma, I guess, or our sense of absence, you know, within our life, and it comes in and can be utilised in so many ways. This is the exciting thing about you know, making the brain, I guess, a literal form, but it can be obviously anything you want it to be. It can be a boundless form if you want it to be, and it's also quite embodied. So that was what we talked about, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was, yeah.
and patterns, of course, and repetition, and that
Yeah.
extends into human behaviours, you know, of repetition and I guess patterning of all of that, those things.
Yeah, because you might have seen the suits in there and they've got words on it. And those words I chose specifically because it describes those sort of feelings, how it makes you feel.
You've got trauma,
Yeah.
despair.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know, I was just thinking about a lot of things. And then I thought about, like, growing up with that being in the background of my life. And that's what made me choose those words to describe that, to talk about it.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so a language, isn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah,
Yeah, it's visual. Well, I guess the world where things are unexplainable or they run so
Yeah.
deep that you can't
Yeah.
necessarily find the words to explain those feelings.
I suppose it's like, for any child that's grown up like that, they get constantly asked questions like that and about their families. And there might be certain elements there that they may find comfortable to explain to other people. And you will get someone to be persistent with that, saying, no, what's this, you know, what's back at that, what are you back at that? And if you grown up without a dad, that can be very awkward and very hard for that person to explain why that's happened in their lives. So, you know, so I suppose we need to learn to be a bit more compassionate, I suppose, and understanding that it's a tricky subject for that person to talk about. Maybe we shouldn't really keep questioning them, you know.
Yeah.
So,
And we were talking about this a little bit before, because it's certainly for you, Thompson, exploring such personal elements in your work is quite new. Did you guys feel because you could connect together over that shared experience, it made it easier to discuss and make work up to something so personal?
yeah, I think it was easier for us to talk about those pieces of work. It's there because it was to have that common link with somebody that you're working with makes it much easier to work.
Yeah, I felt we were mirroring each other a lot as well, unconsciously, you know.
Yeah,
We'd bring in a lot of things and we'd say, yeah, of course.
yeah,
So there was like this invisible thread, I guess, between us of understanding what that absence and that presence means to that person,
Yeah.
because you've experienced it. So, you know, there's this sense that you have a kind of empathy or compassion for each other, really.
Yeah.
We felt that.
Yeah,
And
I
that
think,
was the beautiful thing about the collaboration, I feel.
yeah,
no, definitely. I think one of my favorite moments in the exhibition, because both of you guys discussed this idea of the suits, but those were kind of developed separately in each other's studios. Is that your lapel on your suit still matches very similarly to the lapels on your fly suit. So you can still see this connection of the suit and you working with African fabrics and you working on plaids. You can see that you guys are kind of speaking the same language or speaking from the same experience, even though you guys have two completely different working methods.
yeah.
Yeah.
So from those ideas, I'm just gonna move on to a little bit of work and then we'll do the tent at the end. You spoke a little bit about anonymous figures.
Yeah.
Did you want to say anything more about that work specifically, or you?
Yeah, well, the anonymous figures is just like about what I was talking about with the suits being the absent accident. And the shadowy figures sort of like kind of represent the same thing, but in a different kind of form. So it's sort of like a take on what the suits are about and adding that into the paintings and making them like shadowy figures.
And Simone, you have a series of 4 smaller works that also very almost talisman-like.
Yeah.
And wrapping is a big part of your practice. On one of the few Zoom meetings, you would have the escapologist which is a little doll in silver thread that you just be giving us updates on how much is threaded. Do you just want to speak a little bit about that body of work, how it sort of flowed from the collaboration and your
Yeah.
ideas?
Well, that doll was quite interesting actually, because I never intended to make that work for this exhibition. In actual fact, I saw a doll in a charity shop and picked it up because I wanted to create something for my daughter, because we'd lost a doll when she was really little that we both worked on, and so that was in my thinking. And I had taken it home and, you know, pulled it apart, and anyway, it had life of its own and started to become something else, and certainly not the sort of doll that I would give to my daughter. I mean, she'd probably take it, but she'd look at it and think, what on earth was this for? So I knew then that it was a part of what was actually happening between us and this collaboration. So in many ways, there's an unconscious story narrative happening in that doll, as there is with some of these other works that belong to it. Even though they do have a clear story, there are lots of different meanings behind it. And actually, I think, Thompson, you would agree with this, that, you know, even looking at the artworks, collaboration actually runs a lot deeper, and it kind of doesn't end here. So even though you see the artworks, you know, the experience of actually collaborating with each other and hearing each other's stories, they are the things that really last with you. So the collaboration goes on existing really after the show, I think.
Yeah, I think it does, because that's what happens when you choose subjects like this that some people may find uncomfortable. So to be able to work in that way, you know what I mean, it was quite nice to work in that way. That understands that what we're talking about with the work, it kind of explains to people how it all evolves.
Yes, absolutely. These are difficult things to talk about, you know, they're not easy. People don't want to necessarily go into that territory.
Because you can get some people, when you ask them questions like this, they'll say, no, forget it, I don't want to talk about it, no, forget it, I don't want to talk about it. Even though you're interested and you want to know, they will, you know, don't want to tell you, because they'll just climb up if you try and ask them again and again, because they think that it feels like it's something that's repeating itself. So it's very difficult to try and get that sort of thing out of them. So that's what we're trying to explain within the work.
Yeah. And I think in art making as well, I think you guys have certainly inspired each other to work in different ways, right? Like this is certainly more three-dimensional than you're used to working in, right?
Yeah, and I mean, certainly the way you paint is much more bold than I felt quite tentative coming into this collaboration with my painting. It takes me a long time to actually get into painting.
Yeah, because
But you made me feel like, oh, okay.
Yeah, no, because it was like, that's what it was with the painting.
Yeah.
She was like, no, I'm not sure about paint. I said, come on, get stuck in. I made a mistake, don't worry.
Yeah.
And that's
so
how I
true.
generally paint. I don't worry about making mistakes in my work, you know, because I think I thought that last two shoots were about a mistake like that. So I just go in there and just, you know.
Absolutely.
If it doesn't look right, it doesn't matter, it doesn't look right.
Yeah. And that's the gift, I think,
While we're talking about you guys painting together, should we talk about the sanctuary? So at the center of the exhibition is the large suspended tent, which they made collaboratively out of the Action Space Studios. Thompson, do you want to start talking a little bit about the ideas of the sanctuary?
It was all to talk about, I think it was just to talk about homelessness and the person that used to live in this building and how that relates to the subject of homelessness, which is, we all know, is an ongoing thing and it's still happening now. So we sort of like took that as a subject and built on it and just thought. And then we thought about the history of this place, of the guy that used to own this place. So we sort of like added the story about the guy that owned this place with the idea of homelessness. That's fun too.
That's right, because some of the symbols I think were quite serendipitous. So the target sort of forms were rondelles from, or looked like rondelles from the First World War targets, and then we found out that we knew that Cecil was had been a soldier in the First World War, and that he'd also been homeless as well.
We have Caroline give a like 30-second background.
Yeah,
So people know
Yeah.
what we're talking about. You just might be the best succinct person.
So Cecil Thomas was a sculptor in the Society, and he lived and worked in this building in 1919 and entered his death in 1976. So we're sitting in his living room, and the show is one in his studio. But he had been invalided out of the Great War and had nowhere to go back to other than from a hospital bed, and was homeless when he lighted on this place. His matron told him from the top deck of a bus that she'd seen it, and he broke into the basement with a kitchen knife, came up into here and realised this was a great place for him, and it's a massive act of generosity for him to leave it to us in 76 without home.
So like, so it's majesty that we sort of like built up the idea for the tent, so.
Yeah.
The figures and that.
But we had some ideas before that, didn't we? We sort of thought it would be good to have like a portable suit, because I think that also came around the time when we were thinking about suits. So we then thought it would be fantastic to have a suit for homeless people that could be something for all of the elements, you know. We never got to that stage, but we got to the next best thing, which was some kind of sanctuary for people to be enclosed
Because sometimes we thought of the sea and then we thought of the pods.
The pods.
We thought that, we just thought, well, I'm not sure that would work. If we're talking about something like homeless, would that work? Also, I don't.
It was part adventure, part art.
That's so true.
So I thought that wouldn't work. And I think, what else do I see them having? And then I thought, oh yeah, sometimes they sleep out in tents, and then that idea evolved from just by thinking it, just staring in, let's make this tent, so
and also the different sections, painting on different sections in the studio. So I think we had something like 4 sessions, which also coincided with the, you know, fulfilling the whole of the fabric as a kind of seasonal thing. So then we thought of 4 seasons, didn't we? So which is what you'll see, the colours kind of represent 4 seasons, you know. And obviously summer's inside.
Summer's inside. We're going to put on the outside, then we suddenly put that, let's put it in the inside. So it was kind of like, when we started making the tent, it was like, what colour should we use? And it was like, come on, just use any colour, see what comes from it. You know, it was almost like an experimental piece, almost. Almost, but not quite, but it was just the way we just went about using the colours in a way that sort of like relate to the subject or what we were talking about in terms of homelessness. So,
and your symbols also, you know, became quite interesting as they moved through as well. So they would change on each season. So you'd see some that were, you know, quite well, I guess probably more formal, and then you'd see them change and become quite nebulous throughout the work. And that was interesting, you know, to see how we changed throughout that time at the studio. We did this work. I know I grew a lot more confident with painting, like just attacking it really.
Because the tent was so large, obviously brought a limited space in the studio. It was painted in quarters. That's where the 4 seasons came. You could really only paint 2 meters at a time. 2 meters, tea break, flip it. So every summer weeks we would continually work on a quarter of it.
Because that's what it was every week. We just kept on adding until we had enough. So it was kind of a good way to. And I find that's a good way of painting. You know, you can just paint something, and you think, "Oh, I'll come back to it a bit later." And then by the time you come back to it a bit later, the idea's gone. But if you sort of like paint and then keep adding more to it, it becomes much more alive. It starts coming to life. So
I'm a little bit weary of time, so I might ask a couple of questions. What has been, because I know we could keep talking about the work forever. And I do urge you, next time you visit or afterwards, the preparatory drawings or the paintings and drawings that both artists have done about the collaboration are such a wonderful mirror to the three-dimensional work that have been done. Thompson, what's been your favorite part of this collaboration?
I suppose what I enjoyed is just bouncing ideas or something, and finding different ways of working and really stepping out my comfort zone. You know what I mean? Because I'm always made to painting, you know, like 2D, but to make something 3-dimensional was like a bit of an eye opener. So it made me think, actually, I can make something 3D. And I thought I could add another skill to what I have now. So yeah.
What about you, Simone?
Yeah, definitely the studio sessions. So loved getting into the space, because I don't have a studio at the moment. And so sitting with Lisa and Thompson,
Yeah.
and having biscuits and,
Yeah.
and having a great time. Yeah, and I think also feeling that this collaboration has really brought home to me the relevance of my own story. So it kind of reinforces lots of goals that I have, personal goals on how to proceed with what I want to say. So yeah, that's absolutely another aspect of this that will kind of unfold over time, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, the studio sessions were great. They were really communal. I know one week we had the idea of a jumble sale. So Thompson's largest figure is actually an old scarf of Simone's, and then I brought in couplings that is actually in Heartbroken
And the Madonna.
and the Madonna locket.
Yeah.
And Lisa, who's an artist facilitator from Action Space, associate artist who couldn't make it today. I think she even one week said that she wished she lives in the countryside and she had seen a dead rabbit and she wished she could have gotten the rabbit. Strong the bond.
Yeah, that's the thing with that rabbit. I was just thinking to myself, I don't think it'll fit in what they're trying to do.
And then just to close, and maybe you guys have both answered this a bit, Thompson, do you think this collaboration will change the way you work moving forward? Either in ideas or in making?
I suppose it's a mixture of both, really, like in ideas and in making, you know, so it will make more work, perhaps even more, you know what I mean, so hopefully, you know, it will give me another string to my bow, as it were, so it's kind of, you know, so hopefully
Yeah, is there one work that you're most happy with or proud of in the exhibition?
I don't have any specific piece of work, because I just found the whole process just enjoyable in itself, you know, there's no specific bit of work that I like.
And so do you think this collaboration will change your practice?
I think it has already, actually. You know, I think, yeah, I'm certainly realizing the relevance of bringing out difficult subjects, and how that really resonates with people unconsciously, how important it is, and how courageous it is. So I think you're courageous for doing this.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important to continue that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been incredible for me. Yeah, wonderful.
And do you have a favorite work in the exhibition?
I don't know. I think I like it all, actually. Although I like your suits, to be honest. I think the suits, the Ghanaian fabric is really exciting. I must admit, I'm really, there's some fantastic shops in London and near Spitalfields that have some amazing fabric, Ghanaian fabric. So yeah, I feel really inspired by those patterns, actually, and the bold colours in that work. So yeah, it's very, and the way that you approach that work was really exciting to me too. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, thank you both very much. It's been an absolute pleasure to just watch you guys collaborate and work and come up with ideas, sometimes many ideas.
Yeah.
Really.
Which Cecil wasn't always happy about, but yeah. no.
I would just say manageable, just make things manageable, like you mentioned, we thought about making plans for the homeless, I mean, that's hard to do in 3 months in a small.
Yeah, that's what we just make content, make it.
And it's very successful, so yeah, thank you very much,
Thank
does
you.
anyone have a quick question or? A not so quick question?
I have a little question. The tent I was really interested in because I heard about the stories of about sort of the absentee father, one I relate to as well, throughout the exhibition. So it felt to me like that you both built this together as a sort of place of comfort and sanctuary
Yeah.
to deal with those experiences. Is that part of it, or is it just the homelessness?
I think it was just looking in the highlight of homelessness in general, it wasn't like specifically something that we connected with everything else, it was just that was just something that we sort of learned as we progressed in the work, so yeah.
Although it was central to our kind of beginning of the collaboration, I
Yeah.
think. So it certainly was something that held everything together, and I like the idea that perhaps it was something that, you know, with the regular studio visits, that we were able to kind of connect other ideas to, you know, so things obviously did flow from that central piece, I think. I think you're right, I think, you know, it was a great connector.
Yeah.
And in many ways it is a sanctuary, for us, you know, because I think that this is an interesting thing that I noticed about you, the fact that you utilize as a resource for yourself. You know, your own emotional regulation, if you like, can be dealt through working and making. And this is very apparent in the studio. It's something that really happens. It's very real.
Yeah.
So, and that's what I mean by being quite courageous.
Yeah.
You're doing that, you know, you're actually physically doing it,
Yeah.
mentally doing it.
Yeah, because that's what you're saying when you start working with 10, you sort of like learn so much about each other and each other's work as well. Not in a conscious way, but in a subconscious way when we was working.
Yeah.
Yeah, so as we was working, it was like, this is that made me think how would both styles of art work, you know, how would it work together? But we found a way.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I didn't know you were thinking that. That's good. That's good. Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes they're thoughts, but I don't want to share them, but you know.
And that's the other thing, a lot's going on in that work, I think, that will come out, you'll see after.
Should we do the question from Lily and then we'll? Yes, we do. If anyone needs to go, catch your train, we may go.
Well, firstly, congratulations, it's amazing, and you can really see it's been a conversation and collaboration, like the way it fits together and complements each other. I was really interested in what you were just talking about, Thompson, with you both talking about actually working with the West African Ghanaian fabric. I don't know if you remember actually, but on the first week of your residency, we took a walk down Dalston Kingston High Street and we bought the first load of wax African print fabric. So it's really nice to think of the journey it's gone on from, you know, Dalston Kingston, Hackney's, Spitalfields, coming here, but obviously also coming from Ghana and your grandfather. Do you think you're going to keep using it? Do you, you know, is it a kind of fabric and a mode of working?
Yeah, I'm still using it, still painting it, because recently I did a painting that was like almost sort of like in junction with the work in there, which I couldn't bring today. So, but yeah, on the fabric.
So I was gonna say as well, keep an eye out for the Artlist Hall website. We'll be launching soon a dedicated webpage to each collaboration where you can see images of everybody working together and some of the sketches, and we can certainly add a photo of that painting as well.
You just kind of tweet, is that something you worked with before as well?
It is actually, but only once before, so
It's so good together.
yeah, because my father was a tailor, and he loved plant. But I only used that for a show back in 2009, because I consider that I'm more of an authority on my mother actually, so she comes out in pretty much everything. But my father, unfortunately, doesn't really make an appearance. So that's actually brought up something for me, because it was a real surprise with this collaboration that I would be doing work on my father. I never expected that. So that was something that was profound, actually. I don't know why I didn't say that before, but that's probably the biggest thing, I think. Oh my goodness,
Yeah,
yeah.
because I know for many years, ever since I was a kid, it was something about my dad that I've spoken to mum about on a few occasions, and there's been times when we don't want to talk about it, but I think gradually over time, it's made me and my mum very close together, because now we both know that what happened was just in the past, and there's not anything we both can do about it, you know, it's just one of those things that happened. And we sort of like think about it, we don't even talk about it much, we don't even talk about it at all anymore, you know, it's like, oh well, this is something that happened, but it's helped us both move on from that, so, yeah.
All right, I think we will probably leave it there, if that's all right.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, you guys did a great job. I made it
Great,
there.
that's brilliant.